Imagine being asked to give up the one thing you cherish most in the world, the very thing that defines your future, your hopes, your legacy. The story of the binding of Isaac is one of the most powerful and challenging narratives in the Bible. It's a story that forces us to confront the ultimate test of faith. What are you willing to sacrifice? Stay with me as we explore this profound narrative, delving into the nature of faith, obedience, and trust in the divine. The story of the binding of Isaac, found in Genesis 22, begins with a command that is as terrifying as it is bewildering. God instructs Abraham to take his beloved son Isaac and offer him as a burnt offering on a mountain. Isaac is not just any child, he is the long-awaited heir, the child of promise, through whom God had said Abraham's descendants would be as numerous as the stars. This command places Abraham in an unimaginable position. How could God, who had promised to bless him through Isaac, now demand that very son as a sacrifice? The moral and emotional turmoil that Abraham must have felt is beyond comprehension. It's a story that brings to the forefront the deepest questions about faith, obedience, and the nature of God's will. In our lives, we may not be asked to make such an extreme sacrifice, but we often face our own tests of faith. These challenges can take many forms: losing a loved one, facing a life-altering decision, or being called to give up something we hold dear. The story of the binding of Isaac forces us to ask, what are we willing to sacrifice in the name of faith? How do we reconcile the demands of our beliefs with the realities of our lives? As the story unfolds, Abraham's response to God's command is one of absolute obedience. Despite the anguish he must have felt, he sets out early the next morning with Isaac, fully intending to carry out God's command. But this journey is not just a physical one, it is a spiritual odyssey that tests the very core of Abraham's faith. When they reach the mountain, Abraham binds Isaac and prepares to sacrifice him. But at the last moment, an angel of the Lord calls out to stop him, and a ram is provided as a substitute offering. This moment is crucial. It reveals that God never intended for Isaac to be sacrificed. Instead, the test was about Abraham's willingness to trust in God completely, even when the command seemed to contradict everything he knew about God's promises. The solution presented in this narrative is profound. True faith involves surrendering to the divine will, even when it defies logic or expectation. It's about trusting that God's plan is greater than our understanding and that his provisions will come, often in ways we least expect. Abraham's unwavering obedience is rewarded with a reaffirmation of God's promises, and Isaac's life is spared, symbolizing that faith in God leads to life, not death. In our own lives, we are often called to let go of our own plans, desires, or even our fears to fully trust in God's greater plan. This might mean making difficult decisions, sacrificing something important to us, or stepping into the unknown with nothing but faith as our guide. The binding of Isaac teaches us that when we act in faith, even the greatest trials can lead to a deeper understanding of God's purpose and provision. The binding of Isaac is not just an ancient story, it's a mirror that reflects the trials of faith that each of us faces in our own lives. Whether it's a decision that could change the course of your life, a sacrifice that feels too great to bear, or a moment when your faith is put to the ultimate test, this story speaks to the heart of the human experience. Take a moment to consider the tests of faith in your own life. What are the Isaacs that you're holding on to? Those things that you fear losing the most? How can you apply the lessons of Abraham's obedience and trust in your own journey? Remember that true faith is not just about belief, it's about action, obedience and trust, even when the path ahead is uncertain. Reflect on the times when you've been called to sacrifice something dear to you, and consider how those experiences have shaped your understanding of faith and trust in the divine plan. Just as Abraham's faith was ultimately rewarded, so too can your journey through life's challenges lead to greater insight, strength, and spiritual growth. The story of the binding of Isaac challenges us to reflect deeply on our own faith and the sacrifices we are willing to make. I encourage you to take these lessons to heart, to examine the areas in your life where you are being called to trust more fully in God and to embrace the journey with the same obedience and courage as Abraham. If you found this exploration of the binding of Isaac insightful, please subscribe to the Heathen link for more in-depth discussions on biblical stories and their relevance to our lives today. Share your thoughts in the comments. How have you navigated the tests of faith in your life, and what sacrifices have you made in the name of faith? Let's build a community where we can support and inspire each other on our spiritual journeys.